Hello everybody, I'm George from Ireland. So this video is saying RIP to Jack Charlton because it was I think just this morning that the news broke that Jack Charlton has been called to the great big stadium in the sky to get the World Cup he so richly deserved from the ultimate referee. So Jack Charlton, footballer extraordinaire and marvellous football manager, died at the age of 85. Well, Jack Charlton, he's most famous, for managing an English team. I don't even remember which it was. Was it Leeds? And then managing the Republic of Ireland. So 1988 till about 94, he had the Ireland job. So Jack Charlton, he was born in the northeast of England. I don't recall quite where, into a footballing family. And I think his father died when he was very young, and they had precious little money. He's growing up in the Second World War, but one of the few things they had for free was football, and his mother bringing him and his brothers to the park to play. I don't know if she played with them. And his brother, Bobby, I think his elder brother, was also an extraordinarily gifted footballer. So he did his national service in the British Army. In those days, British boys had to do 2 years in the military. You could choose Army, Royal Navy or Royal Air Force, unless they had some sort of health exemption or exempt for being a serious criminal. Anyway, so he did that. And then he became a professional footballer straight away. And they weren't earning these telephone number salaries in the 1950s. Into the 60s, the wages were even capped. It was only in the 70s it began to rise, and the 80s began to just shoot up into funny money. So he played 21 years for Leeds FC, and that was his entire professional career. That took him into his 40s. He retired. He got married. He had a few children. He had, I think, at least one daughter, one son. And then they featured in this advertisement in the noughties hymn saying, "I was Jack the lad, now I'm Jack the man," about whatever bread they supposedly eat. So he was tall, he was spare, he was, a driven man, serious about his sport, but there was gaiety to him as well. Anyway, in 1988, he took what seemed to be a poisoned chalice. Or was it slightly earlier than 88? I think it was just before, as in managing the Republic of Ireland's football team. Now, football, or soccer, as we often called it, was a bit of a Cinderella sport in the Republic of Ireland because we had Gaelic games. It's like Gaelic football, hurling, right? If you say football there, people often assume you mean Gaelic. But it depends on context. If it's cross-channel football, we know we're talking about the sport that's commonly called as football around the world, because cross-channel meaning in England. So to be frank, we were almost abysmal. We were one of the weaker teams in Europe. But anyway, he transformed us. We'd never qualified for the World Cup. We never qualified for the European Championships. But we got into those in 1988, gave a good account of ourselves, got some good results, a few wins, a few draws, even against giants. And then the 1990 World Cup, where we drew against, was it the Netherlands and England? And then we beat Egypt, and then we're in the penalty shootouts. Patrick Bonner, known as Packy Bonner, was our goalkeeper, this bloke from Donegal, who also played for Celtic. When I say Packy, that's not an ethnic slur against someone who's Pakistani. Honestly, he was known as that, but he was born in 1960, and so in Donegal, there were no people of South Asian origin, so nobody was thinking that it was some sort of racial slur against him who wasn't remotely South Asian. And so Packy Bonner, as he was, he guessed right every time. And I remember watching that legendary match against Romania just months after the Romanian Revolution, and it was sensational, and how just by one goal we managed to win that one. I can't remember who. I think it was Italy knocked us out in the end. Yeah, there was some match or other we lost, and that it was rumoured that the referee was anti-Irish, and I was believing so because we didn't get decisions we wanted, and I was so emotionally invested in it. But anyway, he led us into that was Italia 90, that World Cup, and the country were absolutely crazy for it. We're all frenzied. The place was festooned in tricolours, and then again in 94 got us into the United States World Cup, playing one match in Boston. Ray Houghton scoring about the 12th minute, chipping over the goalkeeper and defeating Italy 1-0. We had to play in Norway. I can't remember who else. Played against the Netherlands. We had a couple of decisions went against us, like one of our goals disallowed supposedly for high kicking. I mean, kicking the Dutchman in the head. All right, that's a bit naughty, but that wasn't deliberate. And then Paki Bon, who was such a tower of strength for us, he let in a p-roller. He let even in a goal that even I could have saved. Yes, he got his hand to it, but he didn't, gather it cleanly, and it dribbled in. So that was really exasperating. I think losing that 1-2-1, if I got it right. Yeah, there we were. And so he retired soon after that, handed over to Mick McCarthy. Hard act to follow, though Mick McCarthy did get us into 2002 Japan, South Korea, that World Cup. We've not qualified since. So Jack Charlton, he was wildly popular, probably the most adulated Englishman in Ireland ever. More Irishmen rallied to his banner than of any Englishman, James II. Okay, James II, he wasn't really English, a bit Scots and French and everything else. And there was a presidential election in 1990. That was the year of Italian 90, that November, and people quipped that Jack Charlton could have won, but he didn't allow his name to go forward because I believe he would have been allowed to stand because British citizens are permitted to vote in the Republic of Ireland. I think they're allowed to stand for election in our elections too, just as we can vote in UK elections, stand in UK elections, even we don't have to be British citizens. But that was the time when Mary Robinson was elected. So I remember Italia 90, ole, 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 things like that. And Ireland is the greatest football team, that magnificent team in green. So the fabulous result, our best results ever. I mean, I know we didn't get that far, but come on, they're pretty good for newbies. We lost our World Cup virginity. So that's something that's seared into my memory. I shall never forget Jack Charlton, who's been called to his reward. So he played for England. He played in, I think, the 1966 victory in the World Cup. And it was quite something to have an Englishman recruited for that job, because remember, the troubles were raging in 1990. It was no sense the end was in sight. We know they bubbled on for about 8 years, and even that's a long time. Could have bubbled on for decades at that stage, but he didn't get much aggro, much Anglophobia. Although unfortunately, in about 93, some English football hooligans, they disgraced themselves in Dublin in a match against us. I'm not blaming the English fans in general, but a minority of head cases. One of my English friends even wrote to me to apologise about that. But that's Jack Charlton, sorely missed. I don't know anyone who's got a bad word to say about him. He looked, what would I say, quite a sight in 94 and one of those games in the United States, wearing his cap and a tie with a cap and on his white shirt, and it was even tucked into his belt, something like that. So he was certainly respected by his players. He got no verbal off them, where some of them were cheeky, like Roy Keane, the absolute toe rag, was grossly insubordinate to Mick McCarthy, had to be sent home from Korea from the training camp. And Bertie Ahern at that time, Taoiseach intervened, tried to get him back. But come on, the manager, he wouldn't do this lightly, send home the star. He was forced to do it, otherwise lose all credibility with his team. Okay, so that's enough from Jack Charlton. What a pity. May he rest in peace. Toodaloo.